So good evening, everyone. Today is another day of our guest speaker series. My name is Christina. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the events lead of Diversity and Engineering Club. Tonight, our guest speaker is Tara Wasilieff. And before we get started, I just wanted to briefly recognize that we are on, for everyone joining in from Edmonton, we are on Treaty 6 territory, and we're also on the Métis Nation of Alberta Zone 4 territory, and this land is home to a diverse group of Indigenous populations as well as Métis populations. And these peoples have been the stewards of this land for hundreds of generations, and I highly encourage everyone listening in tonight to look into the Indigenous lands, the Indigenous peoples of the lands that you currently live on, because it's very interesting, it's very important. It's important to know the history of the land that you live on. So now that we have that acknowledgement, we're going to get started with our questions. And for everyone who just joined in, please be aware, as you can see, this is a recorded session. If you want to unmute your microphone, just be aware you will be in the recording. And then you can ask questions in the chat as the interview goes on. And we will address them as we go. So we have a set of pre-prepared questions that Tara is going to answer. And then if you guys can think of any other questions of your own, feel free to type them in. So we're going to get started. So our first question is, how did you get to where you are today in terms of your career, Tara?
Okay, so first of all, so I'm an electrical engineer. That's my background. But it was not a direct career path where I went to engineering right out of high school. So just to go through the whole journey, basically I started out in high school. I was really interested in all the sciences, the physics, the math, but I was really inspired by some of my biology professors or teachers. And so that I ended up going right into biology right after high school, and completed my degree in biological sciences, first of all. And then I struggled to find a meaningful career in that. It's a challenge to find a job in biology. So I spent about 4 years working sort of more in agriculture, out in the field, and it just wasn't what I wanted to do. It just didn't feel like it had the impact that I was hoping for. So I decided to go back to school, and I'd had a friend that was in engineering and worked in the utility industry. And that's when I started to realize that the kind of careers that you could have within the electric utility industry, the impact you can have, the challenging work, and that there were also a lot of opportunities. So at age 30, I went back to university and studied electrical engineering. And so that took me, I worked actually across Western Canada. I started out in BC with BC Hydro, and I've worked in different sort of areas within the electric utility industry. And maybe I should sort of explain that a little bit better for those that are not maybe in the electrical field.
Yeah.
So like the electrical utility industry, we're involved with power production, the transmission of high voltage power, when you see the large power lines, and then the distribution of power along the smaller transmission lines that you see maybe in front of your house that go to businesses, to your home, and that sort of thing. So there's a lot involved within the industry and a wide variety of careers even within that industry. So I've been involved with design on the distribution side. When I was maybe more out in the field, like at electrical substations, commissioning work, and getting out in the field and seeing what the equipment looks like, how it works, working with different trades, and just seeing how it all comes together in the field was kind of more some of my earlier work. And then I'd moved around a little bit, and I ended up in Saskatchewan, and I worked in more in the power generation side of things, where I worked at a coal-fired power plant in a small town, about 900 people. So that was a big change from Vancouver to southern Saskatchewan of 900 people. So, but yeah, it was a great experience there too. I was involved with more environmental work within the electric utility industry, where there was a unique research facility involved with emissions and some novel technology where we we're injecting activated carbon into flue gas to remove mercury emissions.
That's really
So
cool.
it was really cool and a little bit off from being electrical specifically, but I also had some electrical side projects. So I got to kind of use I kind of was more interested in the environment and biology to start with. So that kind of tied in together. And that was kind of an exciting, it was a really exciting opportunity to be involved with. And that was, again, a lot of field work. You're out in the plant, you're actually in that role, because I was the only engineer on site. We're actually even using tools, which is not really typical for an engineer, but we were actually installing things and trying out different equipment. So it was kind of exciting. So I did that for a while, but maybe that wasn't something long-term that I wanted to be out in the field. So I got more into the transmission planning side of things, moved up into Regina and did that for a while. And and then of course my husband is also an engineer. So that's why we've been moving around trying to find meaningful work in the same city. So we've traveled from Saskatchewan, and then now we're in Alberta. And I'm currently a transmission planning engineer. We're involved with technical studies. So if we want to bring on a new customer, whether that's generation or an industrial load, a new customer coming on. So we conduct technical studies using power flow software, such as PSSE, if you're familiar. So we run studies. And so if that new customer, for example, I'm involved with a wind farm study right now. So if that wind generation wants to come onto the grid, we run very technical studies to figure out all of the issues. How is that going to impact the grid? What do we need to do to ensure that can come on, right, and keep our electrical system running? We're not taking power out or portion of the province, or we have to define all what we need to do to bring that wind generation on. So that's kind of what I'm doing right now. And I've also worked within the operations field, where we're involved more with outages and working with the operators to figure out what we need to do to minimize impacts with unplanned outages on the transmission system, as well as just we're taking things out that are more of a planned outage. So so that's sort of how I've got today, kind of a transition from biology all the way to electrical engineering. And so now it is an exciting field to be in right now with the transition of the energy from right, like with all of the existing, we're instead of fossil fuel, but decentralized, it's now more central with all the distributed energy resources, renewable energy. How are we going to reduce emissions and runoff of more renewables? How are we going to make that work on the grid? It's an exciting time.
I just want to mention to everyone that Tara's internet connection is a little bit spotty. So if it does lag, there's nothing we can really do about it. But so far, it's been holding up very well. So
thank you. Yes, I live on rural property, so it's a lot iffy at times.
I just wanted to say that it is incredible that you went back and did your undergrad at 30, because that is hard as hell. And it's very incredible that you at 30, requalified yourself, found a new field that, really dug deeper into your passions. And then to everyone listening here who's maybe younger, it just goes to show that what you picked when you were 18 in undergrad is not set in stone. And if you have the will and determination, even at 30, you can get requalified and be well-versed in a wide variety of fields within your degree. Like when you got requalified, you've done so many crazy things within electrical engineering. It's really incredible to hear. And I love hearing how much your work is tied to environmentalism, with both the earlier research you were doing at the unique research facility you mentioned earlier, and the current work you have. So for everyone who's not aware, we are currently going through a huge type of energy revolution. And these happen, it happened when we shifted to coal and fire during the first industrial revolution. And now we're going through, it is considered a major societal change, where we are converting to renewable energies, and then our modes of communications have changed. We all have these little cell phone, computer devices, and that is part of the huge communications change. So you are definitely in a very unique field for our time. And that's a huge challenge and an exciting challenge.
And there's lots of opportunities, and not even in technical roles. We need people
Yep.
with people skills as well. With such an uncertain environment, how can we find people that have the people skills to lead those innovations?
Yep.
Yeah, there's a lot of different things.
So yeah, that's just my 2 cents about what you just said, because I thought very cool the stuff you've been doing. So, and then the next kind of question we have is, what pursued you to go into engineering? Because obviously you started looking into engineering at a little bit of a later age. It was a little bit more than just, I think some of the other speakers we've had who have decided, like, in high school, I liked math and science, so then I went into this field. And meanwhile, you were passionate about both physics and math and science and biology. And then later on, you had to redecide to that this is the path you wanted to go down and re-pursue.
Yeah, so I mean, I was actually exposed to engineering kind of early, but I just did not see that as my path. One of my friends, when I was younger, her father was UBC, because I grew up in Vancouver, and we'd actually gone to an open house at the university, and so I'd seen that, but I just didn't see, like, as a middle, see, like, it was metallurgy, and I just didn't see how that fit for me at the time. Oh, I think my internet is lost here. Yeah, so I didn't really see it then, but I liked all of that. And I guess when I went into biology, I wanted to more solve problems, and I didn't really see how I could do that. And I just didn't know enough really about engineering and what you could do. So it's kind of why I'm here today. I'm not really a public speaker, but I feel like just spreading that information of the things that you can do with an engineering degree. So
Exactly.
yeah.
So yeah, no, obviously not every engineer needs to be a super awesome speaker, but every engineer has a very unique story that I think is worth sharing and hearing, especially for us current undergrad students. It's always amazing to hear and inspiring to hear from current engineers and hearing about their journeys, because I think those of us who went into university at 17, 18, 19, we still don't have maybe 2-3 years into a degree a well-defined understanding of what engineering is. And so hearing from an industry professional like yourself, that kind of helps fully develop, what does that mean, engineering, what does the field mean? So yeah. So yeah, that's really cool to hear. It's very cool that you further later on decided like this was your passion and that you did want to go into it and saw the opportunity to problem solve, right?
Right. Yeah. Having friends in it and seeing what you could do. Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just a little later than most people, but
But yeah, but nobody is different. Nobody is like constrained by a weird timeline. You're free to do what you want with your life. So that's important to keep in mind. And then our next question we have is, how do you define engineering?
I see it as solving problems. Yeah, that's a tough one. Yeah, I see it as solving problems, and it's not necessarily, sometimes I think it's kind of hidden, like you don't necessarily, it touches all aspects of our lives, but you don't necessarily think of it that way. I mean, it's from your drinking water, space exploration, how the genome is mapped. It involves everything in your daily life. And I mean, being in the power industry, I know people, you don't even really think how your lights are on all the time, but when a power outage occurs, then everyone notices, right? So we're always there. Sometimes it's hidden. Yeah, I think it does. It touches all parts of our lives, and it's about solving problems. That's
Yeah.
how I see it.
I think you put it very nice. I think especially with your field currently in power engineering, definitely problem solving, right? You've got like a super complex mega problem that's going to require an entire workforce to figure out with the new energy and grid transition. So yeah, definitely problem solving. Our next questions that we have is, how do you define success?
Success. Okay, I see success as more doing something meaningful with your life and being able to inspire others to do something
Yeah.
meaningful. I don't, and I mean, I know some people define success as, climbing the corporate ladder and becoming the top in your field, but I don't necessarily think that's necessarily true for everybody. And somebody just finding what is meaningful to you is more important. Yeah, like even just your volunteer work that you might do on the side. I like going out into the community and speaking to, I've been working a lot with elementary students and sharing engineering and what it's all about, right? So just getting involved and like that you've done something impactful in your life. So I guess that's, and involved with the work with renewable energy and how we're going to transform the grid. So I feel like just being part of that for me feels successful.
Yeah, I agree. I think being part of like the biggest, toughest transitions that our planet has faced and needs to face, which is this transition to renewables, incredible. Yeah, that's definitely, I would consider that success as well. And then to everyone listening, if you do consider success being top of your field corporate ladder, success is your own to define. And if that's how you find meaning in your life, that's how you find meaning in your life. And that's totally okay. But it's lovely to hear that all this like volunteer initiatives and what you're doing with your career is giving you a lot of that meaning that you want out of your life. So lovely to hear.
Yeah, it's good for everyone to have their own
Yep.
definition of success.
Yep.
For sure.
Yep. And then our next question, you've touched on this before about being part of this renewable transition, but what do you enjoy most about your work?
I think being part of large, diverse teams is what I actually really like the best.
Yeah.
I mean, these are complex problems or, being involved in many projects. There are large projects that involve diverse disciplines within engineering and non-engineering fields. So we all have to come together and work together as a team. And that's sort of what I enjoy probably the most. Some of my experiences, for example, I was working out at the control center where we have all our operators, and sometimes we experience real-time issues on the grid, and just working together with operators and other engineers and how we're going to solve these problems real time can be kind of challenging, and you're kind of under the gun so that you don't cause an outage in Lloydminster or whatever the scenario may be. So working together on teams, I find that to be actually one of the parts I enjoy the most, I would say.
Yeah. I think that's important to state that, yes, engineering is a lot of teamwork, and what you do requires a lot of teamwork, which is, it's important to be able to communicate well with members of your team and work well and understand each of your diverse team strengths, right? Like not everyone knows what you know, and you don't know what everyone else knows. So I think that is a really great opportunity to learn from others and learn from their skills and knowledge. And yeah, sounds like a very exciting field with like real time, like problem solving.
Yeah, when you
So yeah, both challenging and rewarding.
Lines tripping out, and then you're like, what do you do next? So we keep the power on. It's fun. Yeah, and as you said, it's about communication too. And I think sometimes when you're in university, maybe you're focused, and even early in your career, you maybe focus more on the technical skills. But I find as you move up or on in your career that sometimes that's maybe less important, and that depending on what role, whether you choose a technical role or a more managerial role, but your people skills, your communication, teamwork, those become even more important as you go on. So those things to consider.
Definitely. I mean, you can be very technically proficient, but if you don't know how to communicate that well, it's good kind of for nothing. Other people need to understand your work. Yeah.
There's some very brilliant engineers, but if you can't work with other people and communicate, right, it's a challenge. So it takes diverse skills, and it's not just the most technical or the most intelligent person that is necessarily successful. So it takes everybody.
Yep. So, and then why is diversity and inclusion in the engineering workforce important to you?
Absolutely. So first of all, I think it's the right thing to do, to have a diverse workforce. All different genders, all different cultures, different sexual orientation. I think everybody should be included. That's just the right thing to do, first of all.
Yes.
But on top of that, you're going to get better innovation, or whatever your company or what you're doing, you're going to have a better product. Just hearing everybody's voices, everybody's opinions. Some people bring just something different to the table that maybe it's really unexpected. Somebody would, maybe you don't think that they're going to bring that much, but it's that person, you never know. Basically, you need everybody to solve, especially some of the complex problems that we see today, like in our industry with all of the renewable energy, you need everybody.
Yeah.
And yeah, and so, and I think we see that now, like in many of the companies that I've worked for, that it is very diverse. I would say that, you know, our teams are diverse, but I think it's maybe the inclusion piece that is still being worked at.
Yes.
And I think the companies today are doing a lot. They're really working towards that. And I don't think anyone's being intentional in not doing that, that it's just the way things have been and it's just a slow change. So, and I think you've probably heard these kind of comparisons that say diversity is being invited to the party, but inclusion is like being asked to dance, for example.
Yep.
So I think that's true, that maybe we're not always necessarily valuing everybody's opinion or that everybody's voice is heard. So that's something I think companies are working on.
Yes. I 100% agree. We were discussing as like our club earlier was discussing about how, you know, you don't benefit from having a diverse workforce if your workforce doesn't feel included. You won't benefit from their unique stories and their unique perspectives on problem solving if their perspectives aren't respected in the workforce. And I definitely think that a lot of companies are trying right now to improve like work culture, because that's what it comes down to. You know, if it was a true meritocracy, then this wouldn't be an issue. But we are human beings, we are complex beings. There's all these unsaid power structures everywhere. And, you know, that's the part that we need to work, and it's the hardest to dismantle, so that, like you said, you know, you're not just invited to be a part of the workforce. Your voice and your opinions and your problem solving have value and are respected, right? So,
Right. Yeah, so that's my personal experience, is that for sure the diversity piece is there, but I do see where the inclusion is, it needs some work still. But there's a lot of positive people. I'm not saying that it's a bad environment, for sure. But yeah, there's work that needs to be done.
Work to be done, and work that not only will be done, it should, like, has to be done, you know?
Has to be done, right.
And then the next question we have is, are there any interesting engineering challenges in your field of work, which you've touched on?
Kind of already touched on. For sure. Absolutely. And I've kind of touched upon that it's not just the technical skills, but the people skills as well, that's going to be needed in the future to solve these challenging problems. And I know I've touched upon the change with the renewables coming on and the distributed energy resources, but there's more than that as well. There's this cybersecurity aspect. We're seeing more cyber threats to the grid in different countries. So they're looking at more ways to beef that part up. So you need more people experienced in cybersecurity. There's also data analytics. We're relying more on that now for how our customers use power and just what's happening and how we can analyze that data. And there's so many uses for it and how we're going to get it. And there's a lot of work on that part of it as well. So there's a number of different aspects, and people in diverse fields are needed within the electric utility industry. So so we're looking for people. So.
That's definitely, like, I haven't even considered the issue of cybersecurity with the power grid. I know that for all our electrical engineers tuning in, a woman was able to successfully hack her own pacemaker. And so now a lot of, like, even medical electrical devices, they want us electrical engineers to design them better to, like, combat against hacking, because that's a very, very real thing. Hospitals have been hacked. So cybersecurity, that's the next thing we need to factor in now.
Because we've seen examples. I guess I think it was even in the Ukraine. So you may, I think they did. They were able to go in and open breakers and shut shut power down. So that's a
Yep.
real risk. So
Yep.
yeah.
So very lots of challenges in electrical engineering coming up. So there, and don't be intimidated by the challenge, be excited by the challenge.
Right.
Yeah.
We need all of your brains, and so please consider a career in electrical engineering in our electric utility industry. We could really use everybody's just all your new thoughts, the young people that are coming in, and what you could bring to the table. There's a lot of problems to be solved.
Yeah. So what our next question is, what obstacles have you faced in your career? So
Okay. I think like any career, I think there's always challenges and obstacles. I'm sure many of you've seen it already in your engineering schooling, that I'm sure there's challenges as well there. Yeah, there's been different setbacks I've had for sure. And I think you say as women in the electric utility industry, you do come across those microaggressions that you probably have heard about. That is there. I don't think anyone's intending to do that, but that's just kind of, it's the way things have been, and they do occur. But I think what it comes down to is being resilient. There will always be setbacks within your life and within your career, and it's more getting back up and keep going, finding allies or people within your industry or even outside your industry that they're there for you. I've been fortunate that I've worked with a lot of women within my department and within the field. And there's been times where things were maybe not going well, and I've turned to them and they've really helped. So, and it doesn't have to be just another woman in the industry.
Yes,
there's male
yes.
allies. Yeah, just find that your person that you can go to, whether you have a mentor or just a friend within the industry, it's always helpful.
Yeah.
There's always challenges, but yeah, I think being resilient.
Yeah, always have someone by your side, and then not only that, be the change you want to see in the workforce. So don't then further impose other microaggressions on other people. And for those of us listening who don't know what microaggressions are, microaggressions, they are subtle forms of racism and sexism. So they're not like as direct as like being told like, you're a woman, you can't do math, this isn't the job for you. But it's being told, it's like, it's just not really in your nature to like be ahead of this team. Like we just want like a more like powerful position. Like we want some more like, traditional like power position for this next project. So yeah, it's those like subtle things, but we all need to work on them. We all have internalized isms, multiple isms that we all need to work on, identify, and we can all do better, and we can all strive to have a more inclusive workforce so that maybe in the future you don't need to have like an ally to help you feel resilient, and that you can be respected in the workplace. So I know this is like utopia speaking, but like if we all do our part, we will create a better working environment for everyone.
And I don't want it to be negative.
Yes,
I think generally it is really positive. I've had really great experiences. But there are those small things. And I really, as I say, don't think anyone's intending it. It's a long standing, it's going to take time to overcome.
Yeah, it's both like work culture changes, and you're part of work culture. So it's on all of us also to have our personal changes, and then it's also for like different programs that are trying to make things like more inclusive and et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, it's not all negative, not all negative.
No, I definitely don't want to say that. I've had great experiences.
Yes, from what you've described, you still seem to really, really enjoy your work, and that you really enjoy the challenges in your field. And that's very inspiring to hear that, despite, your workforce being faced with these huge challenges, you put in the mindset that these are incredible engineering opportunities, right? Like maybe like a really great invention can come from solving these problems. So it is really a huge opportunity, right? So
it is.
And then the next question I have is, are you where you thought you would be in your career? And then onto that is, if you could start your career all over again, what would you do differently?
Okay. Like I think, as I sort of said, I kind of got into engineering a little later. So I was 30 when I went back to school. By the time I graduated, I was 34. And then, I'm thinking about starting a family. So I'm trying to do both. I'm trying to start an engineering career, and I do have two children now. So
Congratulations.
that part has been a little bit challenging. Yeah. So I would say, so I guess I feel like I maybe didn't really lean in because I was already 34. And I guess in my mind, I sort of was, maybe I think I've read books on this where women sometimes, you sort of think, well, I want to start a family someday. And so maybe I won't take on a big role. And I sort of saw myself that way. And then as I've gotten further in it, as my kids are a little older, that I want to take on more technical challenges. And, I'm maybe even considering more of a leadership role as I get into it more. So I think, don't put too much thought ahead of time. Just when you're there, you'll realize what you want to do. And everyone's different. I don't think. Yeah, some people want to consider more of a family and maybe not work as much. Other people want to take those challenges. And that's another thing, people within the industry that you work shouldn't necessarily assume what women want to do, that you should ask, right? Because some people, they want that challenge. And that's one thing sometimes I think maybe people see you in one light and aren't asking you what you want. So that's one challenge I've seen.
Yeah. So I think that's a very dangerous thing to do, is assume what somebody wants career-wise. That's never a good idea.
It does happen, but
yeah. I think, and then in that case, the advice would be is let your wants be known.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
That's one thing. Yeah, you have to speak up too and say what you want, because sometimes it may be assumed. So
Yeah.
don't be afraid
So,
to speak up for what you want. And if I do find as a woman, maybe in a very technical role, that sometimes the very technical things are maybe assumed to go to someone else. Sometimes that does happen. So don't be afraid to speak up, to say what you want, because it doesn't mean that you're not capable. And that sometimes imposter syndrome can then sort of carry on, like, why was I not given that technical job? So don't do that, and ask for what you want, because you can do it. And so speak up.
Yeah, that's awesome to hear. Love hearing it. And then, so from our first question, so are you where you thought you would be, like in terms of your career, or maybe?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, as I say, I think I kind of leaned back and didn't really see myself as like being at 34, right? That I was going to progress right away, having young kids. So I do feel like I am where I thought I would be, but as my kids are getting older, I feel like I do want to take on even more now. So I'm actually working towards more and speaking out more than I did when I was just kind of, maybe when my kids were young, just sort of getting by, because it was a challenging time. So I think, I'm taking on more now. So I think it's sort of changed. And I think that can happen, especially for women, depending on what your life entails, but that your career path may change throughout your life, how you want to focus on it. So that's just something to consider. So I think I'm where I am, but I now see maybe I want to take on even more. So
and that's important for everyone to know. You can always be setting new career goals, new opportunities, and there's always time. You're ultimately in control of your own life, right? So if you want to go further, you want to be more ambitious, only you have the power to change that. So I think that's important to recognize. And then also important to recognize that yes, ultimately having a family, it's much more taxing on your career if you're a woman than if you're a man, just due to society stuff and maternity leave. Like you can't, that's a year of your career progress that you spend with the child that you gave birth to. So, and there's nothing you can do to avoid that. You can't leave an infant on their own as a woman. So
but as well, though, it is, I find, especially more the younger generation, it is a shared responsibility, and a lot of men are taking parental leave as well. So
yes.
it doesn't have to be just the women taking the years off. So and that can be split amongst them. So yeah, there's all
Yeah.
kinds of ways to make it work.
Yes, yes, yes. I was just saying that in general, although like society,
In
there's
general,
slightly changing. It's still
yes.
the tendency that traditionally the mother in the family takes on the most parental responsibilities. And this is not to say that this is true for everyone or it is will be true for forever. This is just has the common trends and statistics that are coming out right now. So yeah. And that
Yeah,
is
that's true.
generalized over everyone. And
Right.
then yeah, I think I asked you this. So like if you were to redo your career, would you do anything differently? Like
You
you're
know, it was, yeah, it was, as I said, it was a very diverse path to where I am today, but I don't think I would change that.
Mhm.
That I learned a lot along the way, and that's made me where I am today. So I don't really feel that I would change it, but if I think about it, I do wish that somebody had told me more earlier on what engineering involves and the kind of careers that you could have. So, and that's why I've sort of gotten more involved with this, speaking out more about my career, because you just don't see engineers as much
Mhm.
speaking about their career, what they do. So I think, yeah, from that perspective, if I had known a little bit more about it earlier on, maybe I could have started out a little earlier. But other than that, I wouldn't change it. It's
Yes.
been a great journey.
Mhm. That is lovely to hear. Good to know that, ultimately you can't ponder too much on the past. What you've done is what you've done. And I think it's a little bit easier to like your own personal dialogue to be happy with what you've done than to be like, ah, awful, you wasted everything. No, that's not the thing. You learn from all of your experiences. And if you're in engineering right now and you later discover, I don't want to do engineering, it's okay, totally okay. And the lessons you learned from your engineering degree can still be very much applicable. Like a lot of the stuff you did with your biology degree, you then found merging later on in your other career paths. So, it's it's not just like one thing. So
Yeah.
I love hearing that like, sticking to your guns and that this is the path that you you stick by and that you enjoy. Sorry. Ugh.
No, yeah, completely. An engineering degree it opens doors. Whether you decide later on that that's not what you want to do, I think employers would see that as valuable. I mean, it shows that you're a hard worker, that you've gone through the hardest program, undergraduate degree, basically. So I think no matter what, whether you change your career path later, that it's a valuable degree. And one of the few where you can come out after 4 years and find like a meaningful career where there are
Mhm.
lots of opportunities. So
Yeah.
no matter what you do in the future, it's I think it's a good
Mhm.
undergraduate choice.
Yeah, and then like you got to work at that very interesting research facility with your undergrad and like, that goes to show that you could still get involved in research and you don't need to do like your master's, your
Exactly.
PhD and stay in academia. There are a bunch of research companies now. There's lots of opportunities there. So yeah. And then our final question that we have is, you've been springing advice as you've been talking, but do you have any advice for our current engineering undergrads who are just on the cusp of their engineering careers?
Okay. Yeah, what I was thinking about this earlier. And I think I have sort of touched on some of them. Again, it's the being resilient. I think that is really important, that, you probably will have failures or at least setbacks, but that you can get back from that and carry on. And you can still be successful even if you've had, sorry, I just got
Oh, good.
that you've had, some small failures, that you can still get back and still become extremely successful. So I think that's important, being resilient. What else? One thing is that you are enough. Like, you don't, basically what I'm trying to say is like, don't have, if you have imposter syndrome, maybe look that up if you're not familiar, that you are enough. Just know that going out of your degree, that don't feel intimidated by people that already seem very experienced, because everybody has started somewhere, and not everybody, people don't know everything. Everyone started out, fresh out of school. And a lot of people do suffer from imposter syndrome, feeling that they aren't enough. So I'm just letting you know about it, and it's something to look at and feel that you are enough. You can do what you want to do. Don't be afraid to take on challenges that maybe seem beyond what you think you can do. It's just one step at a time, and you can always switch into something different, as you've seen from my career. That even if you take one path, doesn't mean that you have to stay on that path. I think it's never too late to change and find what you're enthusiastic about.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the other thing I would say is, I guess depending on what kind of field you're in, but like in electrical engineering, like especially if you can get some field work, that is valuable, even if you're not doing that later, knowing how things work and how the people that perform your sort of tasks that you may be involved with, how that is done is really valuable. And sometimes people maybe overlook that. So any sort of field work, or where you can really see how whatever field you're in, how it is done by technologists, technicians, or field workers is invaluable. So I think don't
Yeah,
understand that.
100% with that one.
Yeah.
I think some devices can make 100% sense how to use in a room of engineers, and then the
Yeah,
people who are
exactly.
using them are like, so.
Because if you didn't do that later, you'll find out later when you've designed something, and people in the field are like, okay, it's another engineer that's come up with something, and it doesn't really work in the real world. So I think having that real world experience and being able to relate to people that work in the field is also important. If you're talking down to people in the field, that's not going to go well. Like, you need to relate to them, that their skills are different, but still extremely valuable. So yeah, keep that in mind. That, field work is important, and being able to relate to everybody that you work with. And not just them as like workers. Everybody's valuable and has different skills that they bring to the table.
Yeah. I think like your earlier advice about, if, you can do it, if you want it, you can do it. You really have shown that by, it is tough at 30 to decide to go into a different career. Like, that is tough, and that is an incredible, like, I want to emphasize, an incredible feat to have done, and to see where you are in your career today. It's incredibly inspiring to me. And I think a lot of our listeners tonight, and anyone watching later, can also like feel a little bit inspired by the fact that, like, it's okay if you find a different passion later, and if you want that to be done, you can do it. Tara is living proof. And also the very, very important thing that, yes, if for those of us who don't know what imposter syndrome is, that's kind of like, despite you being like qualified and stuff, you don't think you're good enough no matter what you achieve. And so you kind of feel like the imposter in the room, right? Like, everyone here, despite everyone having like similar qualifications, doing the similar stuff, you're like, I'm the imposter. I got in here by mistake. Like, I don't know how. Yeah, they're gonna find out that I'm actually really dumb and I don't belong here. So I think that's it for me. That's in very good advice to hear, that everyone has started from somewhere. Everyone has started with no career experience. So for all of us just starting co-op, everyone has been where you've been. Everyone has had no technical experience before. You have to get a job. You have to start from somewhere. You can't just start off with like 5 years of industry experience. It's simply not possible, and you shouldn't let that deter you from like pursuing certain positions, certain goals, just because you're like, well, I don't have the qualifications now and I never will, so I should just drop it. Like, yeah, that's very important to combat that. Everyone's been where you've been, and you have to start somewhere. You can't just like automatically be an expert in your field. So yeah.
And I think even people that are in their field for many years, you'll still find people, I think they still have imposter syndrome. It's very common. So don't be afraid to ask questions when you're on a co-op or on your first job. That everybody's been there, as you say, been new, and it takes learning and asking questions. So don't feel like you don't know and that you should know. That it's okay to ask questions. Of course, try to figure out things yourself, because if you're asking too many questions, that might be, but of course, ask questions when you have them. And yeah, just exactly.
Yeah, so this kind of wraps up our question part, but if anybody has any questions, you guys can drop them in the chat and I will read them out. So go ahead. I'll just wait like a minute or two here. So yeah, but I think very cool. Your story was very cool. You've been in very different like fields within electrical itself, and just goes to show like just within power engineering, so many things you can do that I didn't even think of, right?
And even I've been in more the technical role. So if you're interested in project management, you could be, leading large teams and be involved with more meetings. And if you enjoy more people interaction, so there's roles like project management, or what else would I get? Or yeah, as I say, if you like being in the field, there's more construction and commissioning type work where you can be in the field a large part of the time. And then there's more technical roles or design roles. So yeah, there's something for everybody within the electric utility industry.
Yeah, that's electric utility industry. It's the way to go. Big and broad. And I think that's for everyone to consider. Electrical engineering, it's an extremely broad field. Don't take some time to look into the different opportunities, because there's tons. There's so many different things you could do just within the one discipline. And then to everyone who's like not in the discipline, recognize that about your own discipline, because
exactly, yeah,
every field is like, at the end of the day, lots of stuff is truly quite interdisciplinary. So there are probably positions within like, power engineering that require mechanical engineers, so, different stuff, right?
Right. Yeah, we have civil engineers that build, like they're involved with building the towers and some of the foundations, right?
Yep.
Stations. So we have civil engineers as well.
Well, electrical engineer cannot help you with building the stable structure. Not at all. So I'm going to stop the record. Yeah, I haven't seen any questions. So I will stop the recording, and then we will still chat for a few minutes. So and then if anyone just doesn't feel comfortable right now, like turning on their mic, you can after this. So I'm going to stop it now.